Generally calm people of Reddit, what made you lose your absolute at that time? I had things all set up to play piano with a string quartet for a wedding ceremony in church. The grand piano was up front, near the couple, and the organ in the rear to be used later. When I entered the church, I found that the florist had placed a large vase of roses on the grand piano, using the sheet music for the string quartet underneath the vase to absorb water. Rarely do I lose my cool, but I did that time. Members of the string quartet told him in no uncertain terms where he could stick those roses as they tried to salvage their soaked music scores. That stuck. You don't touch another man's music scores. I was always a really quiet kid, even as a toddler apparently. So one of the first times I remember losing my cool was when I got really tired of this third grader picking on me on the bus. I was in kindergarten and this kid kept popping his head over my seat and poking me. I timed it out, and the next time he did I punched him straight in the nose, which he immediately started bleeding and crying. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently the kid's parents tried to get some disciplinary action against me. That was until they found out I wasn't the same age or older. They just didn't want to make a big stink out of their kid getting slapped by a kindergartner. It was Halloween, and I was sitting out the front of my house watching my sister take my niece, who was around 4 trick-or-treating. The people who lived above us, we lived in a maisonette, decided to shoot a firework at them. This is the only time I've lost my cool. Got them inside the house, made sure they were alright. Sister had only a few non-serious burns on her arm, and managed to shield my niece from the explosion. At that point I was just so angry, went up to their door, and starting banging on it demanding they come out. They didn't answer, so I starting trying to kick the door in. My mum and brother dragged me away and back inside to calm me down. Half an hour later the police arrived, because the neighbors had called them about me. Luckily after we explained what had actually happened I didn't get in any trouble, but neither did they. Sorry for it being poorly written and not the best writer. My wife was due to give birth on a date I had a trial. I'm an attorney. The state's attorney's office refused to consent to a continuance, insisting they were going to be ready for trial that day. The date comes. I go to the courthouse and find out that the SAO doesn't have one of their witnesses and is asking for a continuance. Needless to say I lost my cool arguing against them receiving such a continuance when they had failed to subpoena a witness or make any effort to contact said witness by their own admission. The judge, of course, allowed them to have a continuance. I swore I'd never practice in that court again. It's one known around here for being especially friendly to the prosecution, to the point of absurdity, and where the SAO is known to engage in constitutionally questionable evidentiary practices. My wife gave birth the next day, and I've never been back to the jurisdiction. The state ultimately dropped charges against my client because they didn't have a critical witness. I'd been dealing with listening to my dad and his ex-girlfriend have screaming matches and occasionally getting dragged into it for like a year. They started again one evening, and she addressed me, demanding me to answer something or another to fuel her argument against my dad. I was just trying to play a game at the time and I just kinda snapped and screamed I don't know, and I don't care, and I'm tired of your fighting. It wasn't much, but I've never raised my voice ever, and I think it kinda just stunned them both into silence. She walked out of the house lol. When they brought the third sales manager in, 4 hours into my 90-minute timeshare presentation, I'm in the middle of a refinance on my house, and they told me not to open any new lines of credit at the moment. Apparently timeshare salespeople don't have a rebuttal for this in their script. BC attended the meeting very quickly, and I was not in the middle of a refinance. Even the sales manager bought it and told us to come back another time. This guy at work was cleaning out the work break room. Basically, he was throwing out people's personal belongings. So, I see my new coffee mug I bought specifically for work in the trash, and lost my damn mind. I started yelling at him that what he was doing was morally wrong, and it's not his stuff to throw out. I went to my manager and complained to him about the principle of the thing. I took all of the coffee mugs in the trash out and washed them. The good thing is, if you are a calm person 99% of the time, people are more likely to listen to you in the 1% of moments you lose it. Back when I was working retail, I was manning the return desk when this woman comes in to return 2 totes full of clearance clothes. She wants to rebuy them all, since clearance stuff was now cheaper. That's against the rules and I explain why, but per usual she gets a manager and the manager caves. Since she bought this stuff on 3 different receipts and mixed them all up, this transaction is fixing to take 30 minutes at least, and I'm frustrated, but hiding it well. 15 minutes in I hear some commotion off to the side. I turn my head and see that this woman's 5 or so completely unsupervised kids have piled onto a flat cart and are pushing it around. I don't know why it set me off so bad, but I pointed and yelled at them, raising my voice for the first and last time during my 10-year stint. The entire place fell silent and the customer was so mad at her kids that she took her stuff and left. A couple coworkers said seeing me get angry was really unsettling. A blessing/curse that comes with being the quiet one, I guess. Another unit lead to me about the condition a patient was in. I went into the supply room and screamed to vent at another nurse. Poor girl remains the only person at work to ever see me lose my cool. A kid bit me on the chest in kindergarten. I waited till after nap time to run him over with my tricycle. So that's how you got fired from there? This guy broke all of my markers back in middle school. I told the teacher and got him publicly embarrassed, but it wasn't over. I was holding my trumpet and he kept messing with my hair at a concert and just kept touching me. I've always been known as never being angry, but he did it again in a room without the teacher. I grabbed his leg when he kicked me and lifted it up, throwing him down. He never messed with me after that. I grew up on a farm. And one day several cows decided that, since their head could fit through a small hole in a gate, then their whole body could fit through a small hole in a gate. This resulted in a broken gate, a cow stuck in the broken gate, several cows roaming freely in a field after escaping through the broken gate, and me absolutely losing my I now work in it. Cows are dumb. My dad was in hospital after having a stroke. I was 14 at the time and still in school. This absolute little poop of a kid kept going on about how my dad was going to die, that he deserved it, etc. I put up with it all morning, but at lunch he cornered me. Normally I took all the beatings and bullying, but not that day. I lost my cool. I don't remember what happened, but apparently it took 3 adults to pull my 14-year-old, 100-pound self off him. I regret ducking nothing. He didn't mess with me after that. In woodwork/metal work class at school in grade 8 or 9 or so, this douche keeps hitting my work with a steel rule and generally with my stuff. Basically just blasted him top of my lungs for a good 5 minutes. Teacher was there, said absolutely nothing. In secondary school, a girl sitting next to me kept emptying my pencil case onto the floor and laughing with her friend about it, so I punched her on the top of the head, sort of like a lever coming down. She cried and I got detention, but that was fine. Looking back, she probably fancied me, but you mess with whispers you get the lever thump. I'm 30 now, but if you empty my pencil case onto the floor I'll still take a detention for a good downward thump. Back in school, tiny lockers stacked right next to each other. Locker neighbor would always close mine while I was fishing through my backpack. Went on every day for the whole year. He thought it was funny. Last day of school I'd had it, punched him across the cheek. He didn't do it the next year and didn't bother telling any adult because he knew he was an a-hole. I never liked playing football in general, just because I wasn't an aggressive person. But in 5th grade I had a teammate who during practice scrimmages would always line up across from me. At the snap he would grab me by my face mask and pull me to the ground. I let it go on for most of the season until I started having neck issues and pains, and still do. During one of our final practices I was getting water across the field and decided enough was enough. I sprinted full charge across the field, sacked him with all my weight, and while I pinned him down under me grabbing his face mask and repeatedly slammed his head into the dirt until my coaches pulled me off him. After practice I was running laps until my mom came to get me, and when the season ended I decided to switch to basketball. In 6th grade, a group of some 4 kids took monopoly of the back of the bus, a true power move. I always minded my own business and tried to sit away from them. For one, they all didn't understand basic hygiene and smelled even though they were older than me. Anyway, turns out the bus driver was their quiet, retired grandpa who would never tell them to stop bullying or doing dumb stuff. So one time they have a ducking spitting war, as in they spit across the seats at each other as they jump seats for cover. At one point I was the seat in the middle, and a giant wad of their disgusting spit hit me square in my face. I then proceeded to take my Pearson history book, one of those big heavy hardcover textbooks, and smashed him over the head with it. Granted, this was me telling them to stop their nonsense several times. The spitting stopped after that. Anyway, the book cover cracked and had to pay at the end of the year, but I regret nothing.